Alright, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and welcome everyone to Muslim Vote Matter information session. We are glad you're here to join the movement and make your voice heard. Together, let's empower the Muslim communities and shape a brighter future. My name is Filza, and it's my pleasure to be your MC for this evening. Just a few housekeeping rules. Ladies' toilet is just back through on your left, and for the men, for the gents, is through the side door, just opposite our office itself. We have free flow of water, coffee, and tea, and snacks, and as well as please put your mobile to silent because Ahmad has put a policy. It's $5 per ringtone. 50, right? All right. So just before we kick off this info session, I want to acknowledge the Ghana people and pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Now, since the tragedy of October 7, the Muslim community has become significantly more engaged with politics and politicians. Now, the events in Gaza itself have awakened the broader community directly and indirectly itself, prompting action to stop any support for the ongoing genocide. Now, as a result, the community has recognized the need for greater involvement in politics to help end the killing of children and to stand firmly against all forms of oppression. To empower our community in the upcoming federal election, the Islamic Society of South Australia is pleased to host the Muslim Vote Matters team for a vital information session tonight. Inshallah, this comprehensive presentation will explore our role as a community in exercising our voting rights wisely and effectively. So do stay on for the Q&A session after the presentation to ask your questions and voice any concerns. Now, the Muslim Votes Matter initiative is a national effort itself. They have branches established in each state, so tonight they will share their mission with our community, just as they have in other states. Next, they will invite volunteers to form local leadership group connected to their national network. Now, this group will lead the way forward for South Australia. The Islamic Society is hosting the event, but we won't be selecting the leadership for the SA branch. Instead, we invite you, each and every one of you tonight, to participate, volunteer, and take ownership of the SA Muslim Votes Matter leadership. Your involvement will shape the future of this initiative. As the Muslim community in SA, it's crucial we engage in politics to promote justice, equality, and compassion. By participating in the democratic process, we can advocate for the rights and interests of our community and contribute to a more inclusive society. Now, engaging in Australian politics goes beyond issues like Palestine and the war. As a minority group, we have a stake in various policy matters that impact our lives, communities, and futures in this country. Brother Gareth Graham, the Muslim Votes Matter national spokesperson, is a community activist and advocate who has been involved in grassroots organizations across the country, as well as holding positions in peak bodies, most recently as a past president of the Islamic Council of Victoria and the CEO of the Australian Federation of Islamic Councils. In these capacities, he has been at the forefront of the community response to the challenges of the last 2 decades amid the escalating focus on the Islamic community by both government and media, recently particularly concerning Palestine, and has been instrumental in community-driven movements such as the Muslim Vote Matters in Australia. Without wasting any more time, let's hear from our esteemed guests. Please join me in welcome Brother Guy.
Thank you very much, Joseph. It's quite loud. I'm sitting, that's right, I'll just move it away. Can you still hear me in the back?
Yeah.
I'm sitting because apparently it's going to be a very long night. Pressure's on to make it interesting. I'd also like to start off by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we are meeting on and paying my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I categorically support the notion that this land has never been ceded. It is, was and will always remain the land of our First Nations people. It's very important for us. I'm going to slightly sidetrack before I start my presentation. It's very important for us as a Muslim community to support our Indigenous First Nations. We can't expect others to support our calls for self-determination in Palestine when we ignore the very same issue in this country. A lot of the public discussion in the last couple of weeks around those refugees from Gaza and even the existence of my movement, our movement, is founded in racism. We need to call it out as it is, right? Until this country comes to terms with its history and the inherent institutionalised racism, we will not have a socially cohesive country moving forward. Social cohesion is not my problem or your problem. Social cohesion in this country is fundamentally about the racist underlines of this nation. Until we come to terms with that, we will not have social cohesion. Yeah. I'll get off my soapbox and I'll move on to the proper conversation. The Imam said, we're going to tell you who to vote for. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I might tell you who not to vote for, but I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. What am I going to share with you tonight? I'm going to talk about why. Why do we need to be politically active? Right? What is the problem we're trying to solve? What is the imperative that we're talking about? What? What is it all about? Right? The why, the what. Who are we? Right? Because for some people, they may not necessarily know where we came from and who we are, and of course, the how. How are we going to go about doing the things that we're talking about doing? There'll be a Q&A session. If you really have a burning question, ask it, but otherwise try and leave it towards the end because I may answer it during the presentation in any event. Alright, the why is the context. Why do we need to act? What are we trying to achieve? Right? It's no point just saying we want to mobilise politically. What does that mean? What are our goals? Who are we, what, and how do we come to be? And then how can we achieve our goals? That's what we're going to cover tonight. All right, the why. Why now? Well, it's pretty obvious what the main issue for the Muslim community in Australia is right now. And it's Palestine, it's Gaza. As of 2 days ago, 321 days. Just think about this. We are nearly a year into this. Right? Over 40,000 people killed, 93,000 wounded, 11,000 missing, 20,000 children either dead or unaccounted for, 2.2 million displaced. All of the population of Gaza has now been forced into 10% of what the land is. And remember, before all of this, Gaza was the most densely populated piece of land in the world. And now we've forced them into 10% of what that land was. And we're sitting here, 322 days into this. And we have not been able to get this government to use the word Israel and condemnation in one sentence. We haven't been able to get this government to call what is happening what the International Court of Justice has described it as a plausible genocide. We haven't been able to get this government to unconditionally call for a ceasefire. Every single time they've mentioned the word ceasefire, there are conditions attached to it. 40,000 dead, nearly 100,000 wounded. What's the magic number? How many people need to die? How many need to be injured before this government actually does something based on principle, not political interest? That's a real question. Now, we as a community have been speaking out about this for all that period of time. And we haven't shifted them in any material way. But then people say to us, I'm going to go through this one. People say to us, well then, it can't just be about Gaza, right? You can't mobilise politically around one issue, right? There is more things important in our day-to-day lives. Before I answer that, I just want to show you this little video. Hopefully the voice works. If not, I'll put my microphone and we'll see how it goes.
While Australians are struggling with the cost of living crisis? Or why are you causing disruption with your Palestine rallies while the Australian aged care system is at breaking point? Or why are you setting up encampments in our unis while our next generation is trying to build their future? Why are you bringing a foreign issue into our local politics? Well, here is why. After more than 8 months of war in Gaza, over 35,000 people have been murdered, mostly women and children. Over 2 million have been deprived of food, water and basic necessities in what the UN has called a man-made famine and humanitarian catastrophe, and what has been described by the International Court of Justice as plausible genocide. Despite the horrific situation, our government has been turning a blind eye to the systematic destruction of life and all civilian infrastructure, cutting all humanitarian aid to UNRWA amidst baseless accusations, as over 2 million were on the brink of starvation, and refusing to take any meaningful steps to prevent the unfolding genocide. Now tell me, how can I trust someone that stays silent or keeps finding excuses to justify the unjustifiable? How can I sleep at night knowing the fate of my loved ones and my country is in their hands? Gaza exposed that they've put their political, personal and financial agenda before the lives of tens of thousands, before basic human rights principles and before international law. Gaza exposed that the broken moral compass which justified a genocide is the same which will define policies for our cost of living, our youth's education, our elderly's care. Fixing this moral compass is critical to maintain a vibrant and thriving Australia, the Australia that we love. This is why Gaza must stay at the forefront of our local priorities. This is why we will never stop talking about Palestine, and this why, in 2025, we will not forgive. Follow us on social media and share this important message.
Gaza isn't a single issue. Gaza is a cause, and within that cause, there are some fundamental things about what this country stands for. We just need to think about this for a moment. Do we want to be a country where we are happy to stand by while a genocide unfolds? What does it say about us, our government, our institutions, if there are things that we can do to stop the genocide occurring and we choose not to do them? Because it's a choice. Every one of those 322 days, this government has chosen to say and do what it has said and done. No one's forced it, it is a choice. What does it say about us as a country where we're happy to stand by and watch the complete destruction of the whole educational and health infrastructure of Gaza? How do we trust the government to look after our education needs, our health needs, when they're happy to allow the complete destruction of the health and education solutions in Gaza? Or is it different because they're brown? Is it different because they're Arab, because they're Muslim? It's an uncomfortable question, but it's a very important question to ask. Because why else is it happening? Clearly, the government values something else more than it values what is happening to the Palestinian people. I'm going to ask you just to reflect for yourself. What is that? What is more important than the lives of men, women and children in Gaza right now? What's more important than the very international legal institutions which the West established, which Australia is part of? This should be the easiest thing for us to oppose, morally and legally. Legally, it is very clear. The International Court of Justice has ruled this is a plausible genocide. The only reason why they say plausible is because the case hasn't been finished. What that ruling means is they've seen enough. If we were talking about the Australian context in terms of legal context, it's like a committal hearing, right? In a criminal context, you go through a committal hearing, and the magistrate says, yeah, I've seen enough. If this is proven, they're going to be guilty. That's what happened back in January. The International Court of Justice looked at the evidence that South Africa presented and said, you know what? If this is proven and there's no other defence, this is genocide. That is what that ruling says. What they recently ruled was they confirmed that the occupation is illegal. Really important. Why is that important? Because there is no right to defend yourself from the people you are occupying. That doesn't mean everything that the Palestinians do is okay, but there is no right to self-defence as an occupier from the people you're occupying. We need to start challenging these notions that are just sprouted as if they are facts and nobody can question them. It's not my law. This is the very law that Australia supports. Australia has signed up to the ICG and to the ICC. And our government, Mr Albanese, has the honour of being the very first Prime Minister now referred to the ICC because of the complicity of this government in not doing what they should do. That ruling that the International Court of Justice just made recently around the occupation, they also made a ruling ordering Israel to cease its operations in Rafah. Now, those two rulings are really important. By ruling and confirming that it's a legal occupation, there is an obligation, a positive obligation, on every nation who's a member of the United Nations to do everything in its power to put that ruling into effect. The only reason why nothing has happened is because America vetoes everything that goes into the Security Council. But that doesn't stop individual nations doing things on their own. What could Australia do? Australia can impose sanctions. It can take diplomatic efforts. It can recall the Australian ambassador from Israel. It can expel the Israeli ambassador from Australia. It can change the laws that allow Australian citizens to participate in a plausible genocide on the ground in Gaza. Rather than go over there and then put up on social media them gloating about what they're doing. There's so many things that this government could do, and it has not done any of them. Not because it can't, because it has chosen not to. So the fact that we are all sitting here 10 months and we have not been able to change or influence that in any way says something fundamentally about what our political position is. I want to go through a little exercise. If we were strong politically, if our political engagement was actually what it needs to be and was successful, right? Here are the sorts of things that I would expect to see, right? The first one, I would expect that the government would proactively seek out the leaders of our community and ask them for their input into how Australia should respond to this crisis. So if we were politically strong and our engagement was the right approach, I should expect to see that. Does anybody not agree with that? You would want to see that, wouldn't you? Yeah. I would expect that Muslim politicians would feel empowered to speak out on the issues important to our community. If you're in Parliament and you got there on the back of being a Muslim, then if we're successful politically, then you should feel quite comfortable to speak out on the issues important to our community. I would expect to see a very clear foreign policy position that opposes genocide and stands for Palestinian self-determination. This should not be controversial. I mean, just think about this. That we're arguing about whether or not a genocide is something that should be opposed. What alternate universe would you normally expect to do that? And yet we are. And the Palestinian right self-determination is also not controversial. It's actually Labor Party policy. At the 2023 National Convention, they took a motion at the National Convention that they would recognise Palestine without the conditions that they tried to put on a couple of months ago. And prior to the last election, this is really important because at some point someone's going to say to me, yeah, but what if they promised to recognise Palestine? They did. Before the last election, Albanese sat there with leaders of this community and said to them that the government would recognise Palestine in the term of this government. It finally made it to the press last week. He didn't come out and deny it. He can't. Too many people were there. So when the time comes and they say to you, we'll do it next time, just think about what the value of that promise is when you look at the actual things that they have done since then. You would expect they would use all diplomatic avenues, including the UN, to put pressure on Israel and its allies to abide by international laws. You know, this whole thing would be over like that if America just stopped arming Israel. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. This whole circus around ceasefire negotiations and all this, it's a load of garbage. You can't say, I'm trying to negate a peace plan over here, when over here you just authorised $20 billion worth of weapons to the people who are causing the genocide. And what does our government do? Our government plays word games around weapons. So the government says, no, we do not export weapons to Israel. Technically it's true. I'll tell you why. Because they send those weapons, those parts, not to Israel. Most of them go to America. America then sends them to Israel. That's how they get around their own law. So when the Greens get up in Parliament and say, you've been exporting, and they say, no, you're liars. Well, technically, yeah, but they send those parts to America. From that point on, they say, well, we don't know what happens to them. We all know where those parts are going, right? It's a joke. There should be increased advocacy support for humanitarian efforts. What did Australia do when those aid workers were killed? One of them was in Australia. It basically got whitewashed. Right? It got whitewashed. That's the reality. They didn't do anything when the 249 other aid workers were killed. The estimate is that right now, the average person on the ground in Gaza is getting about 350 calories of nutrition per day. What a child needs for survival, not to flourish, for survival, is 700 calories a day. So the average Gazan is getting half of what a child needs just to survive. And we accept all this nonsense about why that aid can't get in. We would have strong community influence over these issues, and we would see some legislative and social changes. That's what I would expect to see. All right. Let's go through each of these, and you tell me whether you see evidence of these in the last 10 months. The first one, do you think our community leaders are proactively sought for advice by the government? Well, give it a cross. Do you think Muslim politicians are empowered to speak out on issues? It's a cross. Is there a foreign policy that opposes genocide right now? Have we used all diplomatic avenues? Humanitarian aid. Do you think we have any influence, let alone strong influence? Has there been any legislative social changes? If this was a school report card, what would be the grade?
0.
It's another fail. Look, we have to be honest with ourselves. When you look at outcomes, we have failed politically as a community. We've failed politically as a community. So when something doesn't work, what do? You have to change it. You can't keep doing the same thing when it's failing. So we have to change our approach to political engagement. The fundamental problem, and why we failed, in my view, right, is this. We have been so concentrated, so focused on access, our ability to meet with politicians, our relationship with politicians. The relationship has become the end goal in itself. It doesn't matter what the outcome that relationship achieves, as long as I can maintain the relationship. And that's why we end up having arguments within community around, no, you can't not meet, you have to be at the table. Well, no. I don't have to be at the table if being at the table isn't achieving an outcome. Let me go back. They're the outcomes. And we've achieved none of those. So what have our relationships got for us? It's not relationships aren't important. You need relationships. But relationships in this context, without outcomes, are used for one purpose only. And that's to control the community. Government establishes contacts and relationships and communication channels, which in the end are used for their purposes and their benefit, not ours. They're used to silence us rather than empower and raise our voices. You do get things from having access, but they are very localised things because it serves a purpose to bolster those people who have access. It gets you a car park for your community centre. It gets you, maybe a permit for something, right? It might even get you a couple of $1 million for a new building, right? But it doesn't get you religious freedom. It doesn't get you the ability to practice your faith. It doesn't get you exemptions for faith schools to be able to operate as faith schools. And it doesn't get you the ability to stop a genocide. The piece that's missing is influence. Access does not equal influence. What you need for influence is the ability to hold people to account and the ability to inflict consequences on the failure of outcomes. If nothing happens when a government treats you in a particular way, what's going to happen? They're going to get treated in a different way. They're getting what they want for decades. And while this is not about Labor, Liberal, any particular party, Labor is incumbent government, so they're going to cop my ire for most of this conversation, right? For decades, Labor has relied on the vote of the Muslim community. And it has taken that community for granted. Because it knows that the whole period, doesn't matter how many promises they broke, doesn't matter what they did and what they said, the community did not create any consequences for them. It's time that we hold our elected representatives to account for what they do and say and for what they don't do and say. Our political system is skewed. The way it's meant to work is you elect someone. That person is meant to listen to what you have to say, your concerns, your issues, and take them back into Parliament, state, federal, even your local councils, and say the things that you want them to say, to represent your concerns and your issues. Where we are right now is the reverse of that. Our politicians take what the government wants, come back into community and say, this is what the government wants, you have to deal with it. That's why we end up with people like Fatima Payman getting sacked for speaking up her mind because she went against government policy. Prior to Fatima Payman, there was a New South Wales politician, non-Muslim, parliamentary secretary, got up and spoke passionately about what was happening, and Chris Minns, the New South Premier, sacked that politician. So it's not about faith, it's not about religion, it's about principle. Our governments do not operate based on principles and values. What we are fundamentally about is those two things. Giving power back to you as the people, because by holding them to account, and saying you have to create policy based on principle. You can't take a position around the Ukraine and take the exact opposite position around Palestine if you are not racist. I don't care that people get upset that I say this country is racist, because it is. There is no other explanation for why we take one view on one situation and another view on another. If somebody can explain it to me, then I'm more than happy to listen to it. But when the international laws themselves say what is going on is a genocide, right? And Australia has signed up to the Genocide Convention. The moment that ruling happens, Australia should have been taking all positive actions to stop it, and they chose not to. Influence. Influence is about accountability, consequences, and outcomes. We don't, as a community, our biggest asset isn't money, our biggest asset are numbers. Our ability to influence and inflict consequences is come election day. And that's when we need to start shifting our mindset away from being happy that people are willing to talk to us. I don't need you to talk to me. I need you to solve the problems that my community has. I need you to stand up and say it's not right for a genocide to be occurring. And stop with the excuses. It's about influence. So the question is, how do we as a community get that influence back again? If we never had to start with. Another reason why I'm in this position. I've touched on this slide, I'll go over it again. Politicians care little for two groups. I know we might have a couple of politicians in the room. This is my view, you may disagree. I'm happy to have the conversation if you do. Those who don't vote. Why would they care about someone who doesn't vote? We need to get as many people within our community to register and to vote, right? I'm not going to get into the whole argument about whether voting is permissible or not Islamically. The scholars have taken care of that. Go argue with the scholars, right? We need as many people in our community to register and vote. Politicians don't take notice of people who are completely loyal and will not change their vote. The days where our vote is sold are over, right? We need to lease our votes from one term to the next. And if they don't abide by the terms of that lease, we move the vote. We've been taken down for so long. It's like to give you this analogy. Right? On the weekend, I go to the football match with my children play out, and I meet someone there, and he owns a car yard. And over the years, we built a fantastic relationship, right? And I need to go buy a car. So I thought, well, I know this guy, he's my mate. So I go down to the car yard, most places you've got a one long stretch of road has lots of different car yards. So I go to his car yard. He says, yeah, of course, I'll give you the best deal. Come, I've got the car over here for you. And here it is. And you know, because you're my mate, I'll tell you what, I'll make sure this car has wheels. Wow, okay, he's doing me a deal. Yes, but even better than that, you know what? I'll even make sure it's got electric windows for it. Right? And he convinces me that he's given me something because of our special relationship. When he's actually giving me nothing that I shouldn't be getting anyway. We need to go to the car yard down the road and say, you know what? I don't want a car. I've got 600,000 people behind me. I want a fleet of 600,000 cars from you. What are you going to give me? Okay? I've heard you. I'm now going to go down to the next car yard and I'm going to see what that person's going to give me. And whoever gives me the best deal, that's where I'm going. And if those cars end up being duds, next time around, I'm going to go somewhere else. This idea that we stick with one party needs to change. Take it from me. They do not care about you at that level. We don't worry about them. We worry about ourselves. It's all about interest here. What is the best interest of our community? The best interest for our community is that we are seen as a community that expects something back for our support. And if we don't get it, we will shift that support from one party to another. That's the future. That's where the future needs to be. Part of the problem is the fact that we have this duopoly. We have this dominance by two big parties. And there's always a pushback when it comes to minority parties and independents. And we've heard a lot of it over the last few weeks, or even longer, last couple of months. And one of the issues that we always hear within communities, no, you can't go against one of the big parties, right? There's still going to be governments that will punish you and a whole range of things like that. Political parties will not punish you if you've shown them that you can affect them come election day. It's the actual reverse. You are the ones who can punish them. But this issue of the duopoly needs to also fundamentally be challenged. Right? It's part of the reason why politically we are not engaging in the proper debates as a country, because voices are being silenced. Right? We're not hearing all the different voices out there. So I've got another little video I want you to have a quick look at, and then we'll have a conversation about it.
Welcome to Muslim Votes Matter. Today we're diving into an intriguing aspect of Australian politics, its bi-party system. Let's explore how Australia's major parties, the Australian Labor Party and the Liberal Party, have been manoeuvring to maintain a two-party system, often to the detriment of emerging political groups and minority voices, such as Muslims. In Australia, like in many other democracies, the political landscape has long been dominated by two major parties, following similar lines on multiple areas such as tax cuts for the rich, fossil fuels, or the unconditional support of Israel war crimes. But what's often not discussed is the subtle, yet impactful ways these parties work to keep it that way. First off, let's talk about the voting system. Australia uses a preferential voting system, which should help smaller parties. That is in theory. The complexity of this system becomes a double-edged sword. Smaller parties often struggle to make their voices heard amidst the political noise created by the bigger players. Campaign funding is another battlefield. The major parties receive significant public funding based on their previous election performance. This creates a cycle where the already dominant parties have more resources to secure their position, leaving newcomers struggling to catch up. Now, what about media coverage? The major parties are typically in the spotlight, enjoying extensive coverage from major media outlets. This disproportionate media attention, supported by policies that maintain the concentration of media ownership in the hands of very few major corporations, makes it impossible for smaller parties to get the same level of exposure. Coalition building is yet another tactic. When threatened by the prospect of a rising third party, the major parties often form strategic alliances. These coalitions work effectively to sideline smaller groups, ensuring that the power remains within their grasp. This is what we are seeing these days over the recognition of the State of Palestine. Lastly, let's not overlook the legislative barriers. Labour and Liberals, while in power, have been enacting laws and regulations that subtly disadvantage smaller parties. These include the limitation of how much candidates can raise in donations, and also how much they can spend on election campaigns, while parties in power get the opportunity to use taxpayer-funded staff, offices, or travels. So why should you as a voter care about this? Well, a vibrant democracy thrives on diversity and competition. When new voices are stifled and the political arena is monopolised by a few, the entire system suffers. This is again what is happening with the very much aligned Labour and Liberal silence over the genocide happening in Gaza. As we approach the next election season, keep an eye on how these strategies play out. And remember, your vote doesn't just decide who takes office, it's a statement about the kind of political environment we want to foster for Australians and Muslims. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to follow Muslim Votes Matter on social media and share the word with you. Remember, our strength is in our unity. Until next time, stay informed.
As a minority community, our interests are best served by having minority parties and independents in Parliament. It is the only way that we will force the two big parties to actually debate real issues and for alternative views to be presented. Anytime you see the two major parties, the ALP and the Coalition, agree on something, think about why that is. And usually it means you should be on the other side. I'm generalising, right? But they rarely come together. When they do, there is some reason why they're coming together. And the one thing that's brought them together in the last few months has been opposing the Greens on Palestine and dog whistling and drumming up the racists around the mobilisation of the Muslim community politically. Why is it that they are so challenged by the fact that we now want to mobilise politically? What is it that scares them? It's got nothing to do with religion. You know, this idea that you can't have religion in politics is a nonsense. Right? I'll give you a couple of examples. Scott Morrison, an avowed fundamental Christian. Very clear. He was very open about his faith and the fact that it contributed to many of his political views. While lots of us call people to be sacked for a whole range of reasons, I don't remember anybody calling people to be sacked because he brought religion into his politics. Australian political history is full of religion. A lot of parties have religion. In New South Wales, until very recently, we had the Christian Democrat Party. So it's not religion. Our parliaments open with a prayer at the beginning of the year. So don't tell me religion isn't in politics. So if it's not religion, what is it? Is it our religion? Honest question. Do you really think that this debate would be happening if it was another faith group who was mobilising politically? It can't be, because they have. There are Christian lobby groups, there are Jewish lobby groups, there are Zionist lobby groups, there are Hindu lobby groups. There's a lobby group for just about every faith you can think of. Can anybody recall a public outcry when they started lobbying compared to what we've had in the last couple of weeks? So the question is why? Why is it when we want to do the very thing that they've been telling us to do for decades, integrate, participate, and get involved in civic society? Or is it we can only do those things when we do it the way they want us to do it? Come within the parties, because then you can't speak up. Well, that's not how democracy works. Right? You can't sell us an idea of democracy, but then say, oh yeah, but you can't have this part of it. Or you can only have this one if you have it in red. It doesn't work that way. But what Gaza has shown us is it doesn't come back to values. How many times have we as a community been lectured about Australian values in the last 20 years? And that we need to get on board with Australian values. Well, what are those values? What is what's happening in Palestine say about Australian values? What does it say about Australian values when the two major political parties oppose a community being politically active and exercising its democratic rights to be involved and have a voice? Or is the whole conversation about values just a rhetorical exercise where they can tick the box and say, yeah, this is all about social cohesion? All right, what are we trying to achieve? So that's the context. That's the why and the problems. What are we trying to achieve? I'll go through this relatively quickly. That's our vision. It's up on the website. Right? We strive for a cohesive Australian society where the political engagement and voice of Australian Muslims strengthens national unity and promotes values-driven policy making. As a reliable resource trusted by the community, we're dedicated to building relationships that cement a democratic passion for all Australians. We're not about dividing the community. You can't have a united community if you deny one part of that community the right to engage politically. It's pretty simple. What are our goals in the short term? Right, so the 2025 election obviously follows a unique opportunity, right? And it's unique in this sense. We're a very diverse community. And it would be almost impossible for the community to unite on economic issues, education, because we all share different values and different thinking around those things. But we're united on a genocide. And unfortunately, that's what we have now. So we have a unique opportunity where the community is united behind a cause. And that unity gives us an opportunity to bring the community together and take and establish that political power that we are missing right now. So, we're going to exercise the political power of the community to hold the government to account. Right? And the reason why I talk about government is because they're not in power. If the coalition was in government, we'd be talking about them. Right? If we do this, the message goes to all political parties that you cannot do what you're doing and expect no consequences. We want to demonstrate our political strength and unity. They're the two key goals here. So when the election time does come, and when we're deciding who to vote for, it's not about the candidate. It's not about the fact that Ken has been a friend of our community for 10 years or 20 years. It's about what is in the best interest of this community to achieve those two goals? Because we have to demonstrate that we have the ability to influence an election outcome. And in our political system, it's actually easier to vote someone out than vote someone in. It is, the way our system works. If somebody's holding a seat by a margin of 10%, all I need to do is shift 6% from that person to someone else. They're gone. If I want to vote someone in with preferential voting, I really need to make sure my person's at least the second person on primary votes. That's a much harder thing to do. So that's why we're not running candidates. We're not a political party, we're not sourcing candidates. That's not where our focus is. Our focus is to hold incumbents, regardless of party, who they belong to, our focus is to hold incumbents to account. And we have increasing levels of success, measures of success, from just changing the narrative. The fact that the public discussion now is around the mobilisation of the Muslim community is a positive for us. That's a tick. We've succeeded in that one already. Right? We've sown the seed. We've planted the seed in the minds of every single Muslim out there. And I guarantee you this, regardless of what happens in the 2025 election, there is no going back. When we're having these conversations and that idea gets planted in the minds of the community out there, 99% of the community gets it straight away. And they will not go back to the way it was. That's a success for us. A general swing against incumbents in those seats which have a significant Muslim population. Absolutely achievable. A significant swing in seats that we specifically target. I'm not going to give you the numbers because we'll hold those to ourselves for the moment. And the highest levels, if you turn a seat, is it possible? It is possible. There are seats, I'm not going to name them, there are seats nationally where if we succeed, we can actually turn that seat. And if we do, a very likely outcome is a hung parliament. A hung parliament means the major political parties are going to have to do a deal with either the minor parties or the independents. And we will have caused that situation. What do you reckon is going to happen the next day, the next week, when the dust settles? Because no major political party likes being a minority government. It probably won't last more than 12 to 18 months maximum. What do you think they're going to do?
Try and gain the support of the crossbench.
They're going to come back, but they're going to come back to us. They'll put up with it for a period of time. They won't be able to do all the things they want to do, so they'll engineer a double dissolution and they'll go back to the polls. So they're going to come back to us and say, all right, let's have a conversation. What do you want so you don't do that again? That's influence, that's political power. I don't care whether I've got the Prime Minister's phone number or not. I don't need the Prime Minister's phone number when I can remove his people from on election day. Because then he will want my phone number. That's the reality. Right? We need to change the mindset. The power sits with us, not with them. And if you think you're getting a couple $100,000 now for some community project, you watch. Why do you think when you drive around the electorates which have predominantly where most of our community lives, and I don't care which capital city it is, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, I've been across all of them. Do you really think those electorates are resourced the same way as, I won't name, but other electorates are? Not a chance. When you look at where most of the underperforming schools are, where are they? When you look at the health system, I had a relative who had to go to hospital at Liverpool Hospital in Sydney, in emergency. You couldn't walk out of emergency. You know how in the hospitals they give you the lines to follow? You couldn't walk using those lines because there were so many people sitting on the floor. You couldn't see the lines. This is emergency. Now, if I went over to Woollahra or Borkham Hills or Vaucluse or somewhere like that, or St Vincent's in North Sydney. Do you reckon that's going to be the situation? So why do we accept it? Why? Because they give us some money for a community centre? Our people aren't getting the help they need. Our young people are not getting the support they need. And we sell that for what? At some point, we need to stop thinking about my community centre, my immediate circle, start thinking about holistically our community. The rest will come naturally. That's political strength. So that's what we're trying to achieve. And that's what I just basically said. Our vote should never be taken for granted. Okay? All right. We need to evolve. That's what we've been talking about. We need to change the way we operate. And I'll quickly go through this because we've spoken about it. It is a changing political social landscape. To the elderly people here, that I put myself in that category, right? Don't kid yourself if you think your children are not 10 steps ahead of you on this. Our younger generation are miles ahead of the older generation on these issues. And we are not an old community. We are a young community. So people like me, my age bracket, we are the minority. We are a young community. The majority of our community, over 60% of Muslims in this country, are under the age of 35. Born, raised, educated in this country. My message to people of my generation is, wake up. Because if you don't engage with those generations coming behind us, they will do this on their own. They will do it on their own. Right? We need to broaden our influence. We need to stop thinking that we can do this on our own as well. We have to find and build partnerships and collaborate with people who share values. Now, you're never going to find a political party that shares all of our values. If there was, it'd be a Muslim political party, and they don't exist, right? And we don't want them to exist. We don't need a Muslim political party to have political power. We don't even need Muslims in Parliament to have political power. We need the ability to remove people from Parliament to have political power. Before we even think about political parties and Muslims, we have to create the environment that supports them. So if you imagine for the Payne situation, in 5-10 years' time, if we succeed in this, do you really think, one, she would have been gagged the way she was, and two, the government would have treated her the way they did? No. They felt quite okay to do it because they thought, this community has never ever taken action against us. They're not going to do anything now. We need to change those things. So we have opportunities in the coming elections. I've spoken about those. I'm just mindful of time, so I'm going to go through this in a bit quickly. Post-election. What we're talking about isn't just elections. Right? Our movement, our initiative, we're here to stay. Elections come once every 3 years or whatever it may be. The real work happens in between elections. An election should just be a fait accompli. If we've done our advocacy work, if we've done all the groundwork beforehand, there should be no surprises come election time. Every one of you should know exactly which way we're going to vote, because we've been having conversations all through. We know what the issues are, we know who supports us, we know who hasn't supported us. It should come as no surprise. We need to be doing that all through that whole time. And as an example, there is a bill before Parliament right now to hold a commission of inquiry into anti-Semitism in Australian universities. I'm not going to talk about the merits of it because I don't want to get sidetracked into all of that. We, as a Muslim Votes Matter, we put a submission into that inquiry yesterday. Right? We are not just about elections. We are about advocacy. So our whole future vision is around how do we build connections and channels back into community so that we understand what the community's needs, wants and concerns are and elevate those back into the right channels. That's what we're about. We're talking about 2025 election because it's an opportunity for us to stake our position in the political landscape. But beyond that, there's a huge amount of work for us to do, right? To change. You know, we have a saying in our faith, God won't change a community unless the community changes itself. This is it. Let's start changing ourselves. All right, who we are. You've heard all of that, but you've still got questions about who we are. All right, a little bit about us. We actually started organically, 7 people. This is how this movement started, back in December of last year. All of us who were so fed up with what was happening with Gaza. And none of us knew each other at that point in time. And it was only through almost random contacts that a couple of people met, and then they met somebody else, and we suddenly found ourselves, the 7 of us, on a Zoom connection. You know, we talk as Muslims about this concept of tawakkul, having faith in God, creating circumstances when they need to happen. And this was so much about what this is. Now, publicly, you will not know who those 7 people are other than 2. Myself and our state lead in Western Australia, who is also the director of the company. And there's a very important reason why. Because when we first started, there were two others who were on as directors of that company, and they were doxed by the Zionist community. And they ran campaigns to get them sacked from their employers. So that is why we do not talk about, we won't share publicly who the 7 people are. If you come on board and you become a volunteer, you will meet those people, but we do not share them up. So I carry myself and Nasser from Western Australia. We are the targets, right? Because I'm self-employed. I don't have right now a single customer who is not Muslim. Right? When you're in that situation, then you've got to step up. They'll attack me, they have. You've all have seen probably the press over the last couple of weeks. They'll continue to attack me. I don't care. Right? But that's why we will not say, we will not name who all those people are. And the volunteers need to be confident that if they don't want to be named publicly, they won't be. Because it is not safe. You know, we're talking about anti-Semitism. The amount of anti-Palestinian, anti-Muslim racism that's going on in this country is phenomenal. It doesn't get spoken about, but it is a reality. So unfortunately, you have to volunteer and come on board to meet the other 5. This is an old slide. So this was just before we did our first launch in Perth, back in end of May. We now have over 500 volunteers nationally. The Perth team, which went first, is where we did a bit of a pilot, now has over 200 people as volunteers. We have the teams in Perth, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, and hopefully Adelaide. We are very much about grassroots. So while we engage with the whole community, we do not communicate through any channel other than directly to community. So the way we started that is back in May we did a survey. We had 300 responses. So for our community, 300 responses is actually a pretty good number. So if there's any academics in there, it's a statistically high enough response for a community our size for that data to have meaning. And it gave us 5 key things that those 300 people were concerned about. I'll give you 2 really interesting stats. 70% of those 300 respondents said that they had always voted Labor. Of that 70%, 95% said they will not vote Labor next time. So to the Labor people in the room, happy for you to take that step back. This is a timeline. So we started in December. We created our website in January. So it was technically launched in January, but we didn't really do anything. We then did our parliamentary scorecards. Has anybody seen the scorecards on the website? Yeah? I urge you to go on there, right? We will get attacked on a whole range of things, but the one thing that we will never ever be able to attack on is data and facts. Peter Khalil, the member for Wills, right? I'm going to give you a tip. This is coming up. About 3 weeks ago, he went out in the press and said the things that we had said about him were lies and incorrect, right? So, probably next week, we're going to go out with a bit of a campaign. And we're going to challenge Peter Khalil to tell us where the errors are in the things that we've said about him. And for every single error he finds, we're going to donate $1,000 to Home Run. I guarantee you, he will not find a single mistake. Those scorecards are absolutely watertight. Now, what they are based on what politicians do and say in Parliament, not outside Parliament. Because quite frankly, with all due respect to anyone in the room, they will say one thing outside of Parliament, but they will not back that up in Parliament. I don't care if you go to a community meeting and say X, Y, Z. If you then go back and you're silent or you vote against a motion that supports what you said, there's a word for that in our faith, and it's called hypocrisy. Right? So we've had members of Parliament contact. We had a minister. I won't name the minister. The minister's office contacted us and said, "We think the scorecard you've got is wrong." We said, "Okay, we're all about facts. Tell us where it's wrong. If it's wrong, we'll correct it and we'll issue a statement." They came back and said, "Well, the minister said X, Y, Z on this particular occasion." Me and my mate said, "Well, that's all good, but that wasn't in Parliament. We based on time in Parliament." You know what happened? 2 weeks later, the minister's office sends us an email and says, "Yesterday the minister gave a speech in Parliament and the minister said X, Y, Z. Can you update the scorecard?" That is political influence. That's influence. I don't care the fact that the minister contacted us. What I care about is that she changed her behaviour based on something that we did. That's outcomes, that's influence. Okay, I'm going to go back. Here's a quick snapshot around how we structure ourselves. So we've got a national team. And then under that, we have all of these teams that operate. Now, Sister Australia is part of our education team. And we have people who are both, some people operate in the national team as well as in the state team. I'm not going to go through the detail of this. For those people who are interested in learning more about volunteering, we're doing a session here tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. I'll go through this in much more detail tomorrow. And then we have state teams. Now, we set high-level strategy and principles at a national level. You do not have a free-for-all at a state level. That's not how it works. Right? We set the parameters, but how it gets implemented happens at a state level, and then there's a process we go through. So we might say, in South Australia, we think the seats that you should be looking at are X, Y, Z, whatever that may be, based on our data analysis. But you might look at that and say, yeah, but there's something you're not aware of. We know over here there's these issues at play, and we think we need to look at this seat over here. All right, so we go through that process because you have that knowledge on the ground. And then we agree on the focus of the state, and then on the action plan, and then you run off with that. At a state level, it's all about that grassroots activism, being out in the community, education, awareness, stores, shopping centres, every single community event, have a presence there. We want the community to do a few things. We want the community to recognise the brand, because come election time, when they see the brand, we want them to trust the advice the brand gives them. Because come election time, we will issue how to vote cards. So we want the community to, when they see this symbol on a how to vote card, to just automatically follow that how to vote card. Right? So brand awareness, so being out there. But we want to educate the community. Issues around how the system works, how does preferential voting work? Why is it important for you to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the whole lot? Because we want the votes to count. So we've got to do a lot of that education. All that stuff is what happens at a state level. Right? And there's different ways that you can be involved in all of these things. Right. How can we achieve our goals? Because a lot of people say this, it's fantastic, but it'll never work. It just doesn't work. All right. I'm going to show you a video. Some of you may have seen it. which is illustrative only, but it absolutely will show you how the numbers can work if we do this right. Don't worry about these. Don't worry about these. I'm just speeding this up for time.
Today, let's explore how we can begin to harness this considerable community asset and truly make the Muslim vote matter. There are 151 seats in the House of Representatives. Each circle shown represents a single seat. A party needs a majority, or 76 seats, to form a government. In the last election, the Labour Party secured a government with a slim majority of just one seat. This highlights how every single vote can tip the balance of power at the upcoming election. Based on the margins of the last two elections, there are currently 18 seats where the Muslim voting population is greater than the margin by which these seats are held. In these seats, our community has the potential to decide the outcome. And with some support from allied groups or as part of a broader swing vote, this number would be well over 20 seats. Doesn't sound like much? Well, consider this. At the last election, the government's majority was just one seat. At the election before that, the government's majority was also just one seat. And, you guessed it, the election before that was also just one seat. In fact, in the last 25 years, no government has had a majority of more than 15 seats. And remember, we have the power to influence well over 20 seats if we work as a united voting bloc. Just let that sink in for a minute. Still not convinced? Well, don't take our word for it. Just take a look at what the right-wing media have had to say about our movement in just the last few weeks. They are worried. They know we have significant power to shift the paradigm if we work together and vote in an organised manner. Given that the current government holds only a one-seat majority, the impact of our votes becomes even more critical. Let's consider those 20 seats again. In the upcoming 2025 federal election, scenarios could range from distributing the Muslim vote to force a hung parliament, which means no single party has an outright majority. In these hung parliament scenarios, the Greens, Independents and smaller parties are empowered, demonstrating the strategic value of our elected vote. In all of these scenarios, we send a clear message. The Muslim community will not tolerate those complicit in genocide or any form of Islamophobia. We will use our power at the ballot box to send a message and deliver change. And that's all even before we've talked about the Senate, where we also have significant power to make a difference. Now that you know our plan, we need your help.
We've been sitting on those 20-odd seats for decades, and we've done nothing with them. Not a single thing. Not a single thing. After the last 10 months, do you think it's time we did something different? Yeah? I told you about the scorecard email. We even had politicians engaging with us directly on Facebook. This example with Anne Harley and Julia Hill from Victoria. Right? Because we put up there things that they do in St. Parliament. Now, I can't believe their mind has been allowed them to actually engage with us, because that just gives us the opportunity to go back and say, actually, no, you were wrong. This is what you said, this is what happened. Here's the Hansard record, right? just in terms of our ability to present data and facts. So right now, the scorecards that are on our website, we only update them every 6 months. In a couple of weeks, we're going to go live with a system that will allow you to click on a Member of Parliament. That will go through the back end directly into the Hansard record and extract a current assessment of the scorecard. So you'll have an up-to-date scorecard for every one of those members of Parliament who are on their website. They're not all, they're the ones on the website. Like I said, we will be challenged on a whole range of fronts, but not on data and evidence. And by the way, all this media stuff was before we actually started any work. This was all back in May, June and July, before we'd done anything. They were just getting hints that we were doing what we were doing. All right, how do you get involved? Obviously volunteering. You can have as much or as little time as you can, right? There's a whole range of things that you can do. You can do it from home. You can do it on the phone, online, emails, whatever it might be. Then you've got people on the ground, manning schools, being trained to run sessions like this, but also on how the political system works, because we want to do education and awareness campaigns. There's opportunity to be involved in online podcasts and webinars. If you're into social media, we always need to grow the digital content team and the social media team. There's probably not an area that somebody has an interest in that we don't have the ability to give them an opportunity to volunteer. Spread the message, right? You've heard the things tonight. Go home, talk to your friends, talk to your family. The more we can get the message out there, the more interest we can generate within community, the better it is going to be for us in the long run. Obviously on social media, follow, like and share, right? It's the world we live in. Talk to family and friends. If you scan that, it will take you to a very simple page where you can put your contact details in if you want to be included. It's an expression of interest for volunteering, right? So you can do that. You don't have to, obviously, but you can. You can also go on the website. There's a volunteer section on the website, and you can register there. The purpose of this is I have immediate access to this. So if you want to come to tomorrow's session, I'd encourage you to register just so I've got an idea how many are coming. But you know, even if only one person comes, I'll be here. Because every single person counts, right? Just as every one of your votes count, every one of you counts. So I'd love to see some of you tomorrow, but you know, whatever the case may be. All right. I've got us to 9 o'clock, so I'm going to do the time. Do we have a microphone for people with questions? All right, thank you, sister. All right. Self-managed questions, I don't mind. Who wants to ask a question? Don't be scared to ask any question.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Adnan. Very good initiative. Just want to ask, you know our Muslim community and the different organizations and powers in the community. How you think you're going to overcome the division, especially with so many leaders, especially in the big states like New South Wales and Victoria? And I know a lot of these organizations, as you said, they might be more interested in the short-term benefits rather than strategic benefit like this one.
I'll give you the simple answer first. We're going to ignore them. We're going to ignore them. I'll tell you why. We've had these conversations, right, with almost any of the peak bodies you can think of. Right? I come out of that world. Metaphorically and physically, I've come out of that world. And we've had these conversations for a long time. And I've said to them, if you do not change the way you see community and you engage with community, the community is going to solve these problems for itself. And that is what is happening now. We don't exist. We only exist because they have failed in their job. I mean, I'm not saying anything that I haven't said directly to them, by the way. And I'm talking from the highest level down, right? We only exist because they have failed. If they had been doing the job that they were meant to do, there would be no need for an organisation like Muslim Folks Matter. So, on one hand, we will simply ignore them, and that's why we say our biggest focus is connecting straight to the people on the ground, right? Building communication channels where people like yourselves can say, this is what I'm worried about, or I don't like the way you approach that. How about this? Now, it doesn't mean we're going to accept everything that you say, but people have the basic right to be able to say, I know that there's a way in which I can raise my issues and I can hear something back. That's a short answer. The bigger part of it is we will always maintain doors to collaborate. We will never shut those doors. Because at some point, when the community is way down here, they will wake up and they'll want to come on board, and we will say, absolutely come on board. Right? We use a phrase unity of purpose, not unity of structure. We don't care about whether you're an organisation or not an organisation, whether you're part of us or you're not part of us. We have no interest in that whatsoever. Our interest is purely and simply setting a vision and encouraging as much of the community, and by community I don't mean organisations, I mean people, to align behind that vision. And you can do it on your own, you can do it as part of your community, you can do it part of an organisation, you can do it part of an informal, well, it doesn't matter. Whether you're in my boat, your boat, or whether you're swimming on your own, as long as we are all heading in the same direction.
This one a question probably to you, but there was an opening session which is Sister Filza. She already started saying that we, as a society, we won't be involved with this, but we're just hosting the event. So I just want to find out, is it something which they do consider in the future when this happens, or doesn't happen? Because I know there's communities and there's people, there's the society is the biggest society of in South Australia, and I think their involvement is probably becomes a pillar for most people in South Australia, and they should be doing it. And I'll ask for answer for that.
Look, I'm sure they'll answer for them, but what I'll say is this. First of all, we're not a member organisation, so that you can't, no organisation is going to join us. It doesn't work that way. But the Islamic Society of South Australia has endorsed 2 of our public statements previously. What we are going to have on our website, we're working through it at the moment, is organisations who support what we're doing. Right? Now, organisations have to be careful, and it's part of the reason again why we exist. Under our rules in Australia, if you're a registered charity, you are limited in what you can do politically. So a registered charity can't go out there and campaign for a person or a political party. They can talk about issues, but not specifically parties and individuals. That's another reason why we exist. We can do that. We're not a charity, we will never be a charity, right? So it doesn't really matter, or it's not about people joining, it's simply the fact that we're sitting here in this facility says that this society is supporting the general initiative, and they're making, giving us the opportunity to talk to community. That's more than what we can ask for from any organisation. But they can answer that for themselves.
No, you okay?
Sort of, but not entirely.
You need more answer?
Yes.
Okay, can I have a...
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for your question, Brother Samir. Actually, we invite the Muslim World Matters to come to this one because we know how important the job that they are doing. At the same time, we need more individual, independent people to start working on this initiative, not to come from an organization and to give them the order. Because most of the time, that's especially for people who are not affiliated with any organization, they thought we just ask them like to follow the instructions. So that's why we are giving the opportunity for Muslim Vote Matter to form like a separate independent board in order for the community to listen to them, not like to be instructed by us. So that's why like we offer the center, we offer the place, when we ask the Muslim Vote Matter and to speak to everyone and to be totally independent. So hopefully this makes sense.
Would you be sort of like supporting the group, whoever they are, individuals or groups, in new positions as a society?
So if we don't, so why we have to ask them to come to this meeting? So that's why we start the initiative here in order to give this independence to the new board. But of course, we are going to support.
I'm talking future, because when the opening session started, Sister Filza, she said we won't be participating in this. It's going to be sort of like...
No, we're just giving like the opportunity for the others to say...
She said we're only providing the what do you call it?
Yes, so to give a peace of mind for the new board
that was a good message to the public here, I'd say.
Was good message?
It wasn't.
Wasn't?
No.
Okay. So from now on, we are going to control the Muslim vote.
No. It was a good message because seriously, we won't be part of this. It's not a good message to give to.
So do you want us to be a part of it?
Of course, if you can.
But we are going to control it.
No, you don't control it. I need to be part of it.
How come? So it's going to be two boards, okay? So to have two boards is like two.
So you said we won't be part of it, but it's for you guys. So I don't understand your answer.
Sorry, Brother Saeed. The idea not to be part of it as a structure. So as a structure, as Islamic Society organization, if we're going to be part of it, we have to structure it. We have to put people who will run it in a certain way as administrators, and we don't want to do that. We want the power to the people because this is about the people, what they want and what they believe in directly with the initiative. So we support the initiative as an initiative, but we give you the freedom to volunteer and work with them directly. So the idea is here we are kind of a conduit where we connect you with the initiative. I think this is better for you and for the community and better for the Islamic Society as well. We have some other channels that we've been working for the last 9 or 10 months, and I don't think they are working as effective as this initiative. I'll give the microphone.
So while you do, I'll just clarify something. Part of the challenge in having an organisation lead one of our state teams is we will not give that control to the organisation. It is our brand. We carry the risk. So anybody who comes in to the state reports is part of NVM and has to accept the way we run, our parameters, our systems. You can't have two masters. Yep. So even if you're part of the Islamic Society of South Australia, as a volunteer of NVM, you were NVM. Yep. Right? So it's cleaner in that sense. Yeah? But I've got no doubt of the support of the Islamic Society of South Australia.
Hello, thank you, Adriana Christopoulos. Thank you for tonight's presentation, and also thank you to the Islamic community and society for facilitating what I see is an educational process for everyone here to understand what Muslim Vote Matters is, what their purpose is and what they're trying to achieve, and that education is for you to take on board and to benefit from. So thank you for coordinating tonight, and I hope there's more opportunities for educational sessions for your community and others in the future. My question to you, sir, is that you've commented, and I've gone onto your website and used and had a look at that. Obviously, you can only currently comment on elected members of federal government. Again, my question is, going forward, there'll be a number of different candidates. How will you be able to access the quality of their statements if they've not performed or committed any, anything in Parliament? You don't have Hansard. Where do how do you qualify the quality of those statements?
So there'll be a couple of ways. One is we will invite all candidates in our focus seats to complete a questionnaire. where we will ask them questions which are aligned to the issues that we've identified of concern to our community. We will organise town halls like this, where we'll invite candidates to come before we've endorsed anybody, and we won't ask the questions, we'll facilitate, but they will ask the questions because you're meant to be their representatives. So it's things of that nature that we will then use, which will go into anybody who's come out of the education world will understand when I talk about a rubric. So we have our rubric established. So we will assess every candidate in every seat in exactly the same way. So that rubric's not public, that's for internal purposes, but if the AEC, for example, says, well, why did you recommend that and this, well, we will have the evidence for why that is.
Yeah, I guess, I guess I was just sort of following on her question. How do we proceed forward? It's a great initiative. Youth being involved, so I'll go out and I'll go talk to all my friends and I sort of explain what I've learned here today. How do I explain to them moving forward, once we have hung the parliament, how do we move that forward? Where do we go from there?
So after the election,
Correct.
That's a big question. I will go through part of that tomorrow in the volunteers session, but there's a slide that I didn't talk to, but I'll just show it. This one. So this is the broader mission of what we're about: research, education, collaboration, engaging, and advocacy. This is what our BAU looks like. So moving forward, we will have people operating in every one of these streams nationally and at a state level. So a big part of what we will be doing is building those channels back into community. So how do we make sure we still engage with people on the ground, that we have the ability to understand what their issues are? How do we inform the research that we're doing? How do we identify the issues that we're going to be going to government? Right? So a big part of this is we need to build a team that between elections will carry all this work on. That's the short answer. The easiest way is for people to, I guess, come on board as a volunteer to start with and get a bit more of the information, because part of the education process will include some of this. Beyond elections, what do we then do? How do we identify people with the right skills and capabilities? Because not everybody can involve in all the different sort of stuff, right? As a community, we have to start doing things with that standard, aiming for excellence in what we do. And that means the right people for the right roles, those sort of things. I'll leave that up if anybody wants to take a view of that.
Jazakallah khair, brother. May Allah bless and give the success. Just a couple of questions. Understand at the moment the focus is for 2025 elections. Would you also be providing information for the upper house candidates, the senators, and come state election? Because obviously national matters are important, but there will be some state matters. Would MDM also cater for the state seats as well?
So the short answer is we will be active at every level, including council, including councils. So I did a session. So in Victoria, council elections are in October. New South Wales has council elections in September. I don't know when they are here. Last weekend I did a session for one of the local communities with respect to council elections. We can't focus our direct campaigning yet on council and state, but we will support anybody who wants to do that in this current period. But once we get past the 25 election, our normal operating rhythm will be the whole lot. So our state teams will also support council and state elections as well.
The second question, you may or may not be comfortable answering in the community, but how you want to fund this in the long term, as the community can do anything for the funding perspective? Will there be any campaigns for the funding or not?
So it's a really important question. People ask, how are you funded? Right? The short answer right now is we are mostly self-funded. So anybody who knows me knows I do a lot of travelling. I pay for all of that myself. not a single cent comes out of those accounts. We've received 2 unsolicited donations of thousands of dollars. One of them is completely anonymous. We don't even know who it is. They gave that money to a solicitor, and then that solicitor contacted us. The money sits in that solicitor's trust account, and when we spend it something that we can do, we send the invoice to the recipient solicitor, and they pay us the money. Right? We've saved that money for the things that we have to do, our printing and stuff like that. We are about to go live with a donation page. We're just doing the final testing of that now, and we are waiting for our permits. You can't go get money from public without permits. The moment we do that, that donation page will be live. So we're not the equivalent of Climate 200 or whatever. We don't have a big millionaire backing behind us. We have the community behind us. And we've got no doubt. Now people ask us, the money's not going to come from me, it's not going to come from you, right? So sorry to my non-Muslim guests tonight. I'm talking faith here. Our risk comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we should never ever not do something because we're not sure where that risk is going to come from. It's not up to me or up to you. Right? It's the same question I get when I get asked about what's happening in Gaza. People say to me, we're not going to be able to free Palestine. Why do we keep going? And I say, how arrogant are we to think that Allah has decreed that we're the ones going to free Gaza? Who says we're going to do it? It might be my children, my grandchildren. It doesn't matter whether we free Gaza or not. What matters is that we act. We act, and we leave the outcome to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's tawakkul. So the money, like I said, those two donations came out of the blue. We didn't ask for them. That's what will happen. We have no doubt. If we keep our intentions clean and we do this for the sake of Allah and the community is so generous. Right? I did an estimate last year, nationally. We raised over $50 million for buildings across the country. $50 million. From a charity perspective, we are the highest donator of money to charity of any community in Australia. When the community trusts you and they see the benefit, money's not going to be an issue.
Assalamu alaikum, guys. Thank you for your talk. That was very informative and the educational part. My question to you is, since it's been very political, you talked about responsibility and holding our politicians accountable, and if we had access to them and their abilities, is that we should be holding them accountable, and it's not just access. I wanted to talk about the people that have that relationship with these politicians. I've stopped Penny Wong in the street, and recently our state, Peter Malinauskas, our state premier, and when I asked them, come meet with the Muslim community, come speak to us, both of their answers were, we do meet with them, and we've had very happy conversations. And that is, I think, a slap in the face to people that are going out of their way trying to say, this is not the right thing. So they're clearly meeting with people that are not making them uncomfortable, that are not holding them accountable, and that accountability is a very private thing amongst them. And how do we keep our leaders accountable, and that a $2 million building every 5 years is not good enough? It's not housing our homeless, it's not bringing our people together, it's not setting up the community, and it's not running these educational programs. So our responsibility as Muslims, you were talking about our role, our deen, and what it teaches us is to hold each other accountable with not just money, but responsibility to lead everyone here. What do you think we should be doing?
The simplest answer is we do what I've outlined and we succeed. If we do this and it works, it makes every one of those people irrelevant. I guarantee you, Penny Wong, the day after an election, if this pulls off, isn't going to be talking to them. Because what this will demonstrate is that is not where the power of the community lies. This has been smoke and mirrors for decades because it served both interests to build this image that this is how you influence community, when it really is about control. We succeed here. The politicians will drop them at the heartbeat because their interests aren't going to get served by maintaining that facade. That's the way we do, that's the way we create change, by doing this and making it work. So we will force the change. Yeah? Don't waste effort fighting those people and those organisations. It's just not worth our time. We're much better putting our energy into actually doing the work, because when we do it, the community will see the benefit, and the moment the community shifts, those people will run. They will run, because they will see that they're going to be left on their own. Right? So just ignore them, concentrate and make this work.
So I have a small questions about the way we are actually handling these situations. Situation is the voting. So to my understanding, when I go to the rally for the Palestinians every Sunday, or whenever I'm meeting, so I found a lot of non-Muslims also joining us.
Yep.
So what's your plan to actually broadcast this message to the people who are not Muslims as well?
Mm-hmm.
So for the Muslim ones, I have nothing to say.
Yep.
So, but I can see a bigger community, yes, a bigger population can be now a part of this journey. I mean, what's the plan for that?
Sure. That's a really good point. In fact, we were having a conversation with some people earlier tonight, and this issue came up. Muslim Votes Matter is not about Muslim issues. That's the first point. What we're talking about are not faith issues. A genocide has got nothing to do with faith, right? It's human rights, right? So the things that we're talking about are nothing unique to our faith. The reason why we've got Muslim Votes Matter, though, is because our community has been sidelined politically. So our focus is to mobilise our community on those general issues. With respect to other communities, we already have, for example, in Perth, we already have non-Muslims who are members of Muslim Votes Matter. On our station on Instagram, you will see a video by a non-Muslim barrister who was a member of the Labor Party in Western Australia. He resigned from the Labor Party. He's now a volunteer with us, and he did a video. We got an email 2 weeks ago from a lady in Harvey Bay in Queensland. Right? She's an elderly lady. She'd seen one of our, I think it was after I did the interview with The Guardian. It was after The Guardian interview. And she sent us this really lovely email, basically saying, I support you 100%, tell me how I can be involved. Right? But our focus right now isn't on the non-Muslim community. We need to mobilise us first. We need to build our political power base, because then we actually have something to offer. Then we can go to the Chinese community and say, you know what, we know that there are 20 seats across the country where you have enough people in those electorates to influence the outcome. Do you want us to help you understand how you can do that? We prove the model, and then we go out and we build coalitions and we collaborate and we increase our ability to influence on a whole range of other issues.
Assalamu alaikum.
Sorry.
There are lobbyists active in parliament and also bureaucratic level, local government and media, especially from other ethnic, you have already mentioned, from other ethnic group, especially Jainist group, and also not necessarily Jainist, another faith group as well. Recently in media, they're quite active. They're doing a lot of passive things for sympathize and increase their power, and which is also influencing the politician in other way. And so how about Muslim lobbyist group? I don't feel their existence. If I listen to the national news, ABC and other, or regular listener to the radio or other newspaper, I can feel the existence of other lobbyists. How about Muslim lobbyists?
We don't exist. It's the whole purpose of why we need Muslim Votes Matter, to actually do exactly what you're saying. The fact that you don't hear and see Muslims talking like other interest groups out there tells us that we've failed politically. I agree with you 100%, and that's why we have to do this. This is exactly what you're talking about. This is the missing piece of the puzzle.
Just not so much a question, but a statement perhaps answering to your comment earlier about community leaders seemingly benefiting from relationships with members of Parliament. As chair of the South Australian Multicultural Commission for the last 6 years, we have right here in this room your representative from the Islamic community who actually resigned intentionally, with purpose and with dignity and with force for your community over the fact that the government, the minister, was not listening. Was not listening, in the very early days. So rest assured that those community leaders that do represent you are representing you with the belief, the passion, and the dignity that this community requires. The Muslim community is not a people of a lesser God. You are not a people of a lesser God. You are a people who deserve to be heard and represented, and your views need to be considered. And yes, you're right, it's all about the numbers, and it's at the end of the day, it's the numbers that are going to matter. But just to reinforce that Ahmed Zarika at the end of, I think, October last year, resigned within a week of the invasion, or what happened on October 7th. So know that your community leaders are doing the best that they can, and probably doing better than some of the others in the other states. So thank you.
Thank you. I have a curious question, just very simple.
Sure.
What has the advertiser said? What did they say anything?
The advertiser?
Yes.
The newspaper?
Yes.
They said lots of stuff.
Yeah. I'm just very, and what was your response?
My response about me personally?
Yeah,
Absolutely. No, it's a valid question. Follow me on TikTok, and there's a video where I talk about this. Right? So let's have a conversation about it. Absolutely. So in 1999, right? So I was a solicitor in New South Wales, and in 1999, the Law Society put my practice under management for administrative things. Right? I wasn't up to date with my client files. I was behind on my banking, a whole range of stuff like that. August of 1999. It took them 5 years to finalise that investigation. In that 5 years, I couldn't access any of my bank accounts. I still had an office that I could pay rent for. Right? It ruined me financially. At the end of the 5 years, they returned to me $30,000. Big deal. I also had to pay for their investigation, which was over $50,000. Right? I've never been charged with a single criminal offence, despite what the advertiser said. They had to correct that. So there was disciplinary processes taken against me in the Administrative Decisions Tribunal. Right? I chose not to defend those for a whole range of reasons, but it's about me taking accountability. I did the wrong thing, there's no question about that. 25 years ago. I have no problem whatsoever in standing on my record for this community since then. No problem whatsoever. We make mistakes. The question is, what do you do after that? Right? And I'll share a story with you. So as I said, it ruined me financially completely. I lost my house, my business. We had 4 young kids. We ended up moving into this tiny 2-bedroom flat, right? Because I was out of a job, no money, nothing. That was in 1999. 2006, so 7 years, I have rebuilt my career, doing a job that best suited me much better than what I was doing before. I had been moved by my employer, transferred to Victoria, a move which financially allowed me 3 years rent-free and to build a home for my family. We would drive up to Sydney on a regular basis to visit family, and on the drive back we would leave very early because the kids were little. So we'd stopped after Goulburn, if anybody knows, don't worry, there's a place called Goulburn between Sydney and Canberra, and I stopped to pay flageolet. So I paid flageolet on the side of the road, got back in my car, and I think about this, even to this day, I think about those events. And I was just thinking to myself, I was counting my blessings, right? And I was thinking, If only all of that. And then I said, hang on, I was saying, stop. You've just counted all these blessings that Allah has given you. At the time, it was the worst thing that happened to me, but it was the best thing that happened to me. Allah has given you so much since then that I could never ever do enough community service to repay you. That's what drives me. Because I don't know on the day of judgment which hand that book's going to come into. Right? I've made lots of mistakes. Right? We all do. The question is, what do you do after that? Right? So they will write about me forever. This is not new. When I was president of the Islamic Council in Victoria, Andrew Bolt did the same campaign because I was pushing back against the terrorism stuff.
It's just a mercenary.
But let me give you, subhanAllah, I wasn't going to go down this, but sometimes, we don't talk about our sins, but sometimes we have to. This was in 2014. I was head of HR operations at Australia Post, nationwide. I ran operational HR at Australia Post. When I was secretary of the Islamic Council, Victoria, I was a spokesperson, when they ran that campaign against me. I went into my boss's office, I said, I'm going to tell you, tomorrow, in the newspaper, there's going to be all this stuff about me. And they said, yeah, no worries, we'll support you. So, I'm 2 rungs down from the general manager, right? So I'm one of the top 200 execs of the company. 2 weeks later, they come to me and they say, look, we have to have a conversation about your public stuff. We're a government business enterprise. We're worried about, and I said, why? No one has ever connected what I do for community with Australia Post. And remembering at the time, the head of Australia Post was a Muslim. I'm not going to name names, was a Muslim, right? And I said, yeah, and I said, so, and you saying to me I have to choose? They said, oh, no, we're not saying that. I said, well, it really sounds like that's what you're saying. And I said, do you really want me to go to my community and say, Australia Post, run by a Muslim, has just forced me to pick between serving my community or keeping my job, right? I was on $250,000 a year, right? They said, we really think you should take a couple of weeks to just think about your future. So I said, all right, no worries. So I took a couple of weeks off. In that 2 weeks was the ICB elections. I ran for president, and I became elected president, even though the media had run that campaign against me, right, in the middle of that. At the end of that 2 weeks, I went back to Australia Post, and I just went in my office, as normal. They were expecting me to, I said nothing. A couple of days later, they called me into the office, and they said, well, what did you? I said, well, yeah, I thought about it, just need to let you know. I'm now president of the Islamic Council. And they looked and I said, well, unless you tell me that I can't do it, this is what I'm doing. And they made life really hard. And then about a month later, they called me in again. And I said, look, let's stop beating around the bush. You don't want me here. I'm not going to pick my job over my community. I'll tell you this now. So why don't we negotiate an exit? So we negotiated an exit for me, right? Wallahi, I left Australia Post in February 2015. I went out into my own consulting practice. I have not been able to work for a single day. Not one. And as I said earlier today I don't have a single non-Muslim client. When this came up, I knew straight away the purpose of that was this. Allah put me in a position today where they can do no harm to me. I don't need anybody other than me. They already ran all the campaigns against me 10 years ago. They're just going to rehash that. The community knows all about that. They can't attack my work. I'm self-employed. I don't advertise who my clients are online, but all my clients are actually Muslim organisations right now. So that says to me, you know what? Allah has prepared you to do something that not everyone in the community can do. Not everybody can take the risk that I can take now. And even doing all of that, at the end of the day, I have to rely on Allah's mercy to get me through the day of judgment, not my actions. No, brother, it's your heart.
From the advertiser. I would know that there was something like that.
I'm tell you to take a particular path. It's your right to ask the questions. Yeah. There was Adam, there was Ahmed, there was, yeah, absolutely.
Hi. Yes, God bless you. I have two issues to say it, please. The first one is, I thought when I come here that I will find no place to sit because it will be crowded. And I actually, when I received the invitation, I sent it to many of my friends, and a lot of them, they didn't come. They are scared. That is one of the questions that we must make them understand, that to be in the community, in the Muslim community. And I hope that we must make something to make them understanding that this will be a good issue for themselves. Yes. This is the first issue. The second issue is, sorry for, I don't know how to phrase it. Is this, because I assume that we are, sorry for that, we are all here Sunni in this mosque. Is there is communication with the other groups, Shia or something? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll answer the second question first. Short answer is absolutely. We are not sectarian. So Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland, already we have Shia members within Muslim Votes Matter. Right? So if that's a problem for anybody, I'll be really upfront, don't sign up. We don't have the luxury of being sectarian. Right? The racists out there don't care if you're Sunni or Shia. Right? And we need to stop caring about it. So, to the first point, people ask you. Right? And so we've just got to make sure that we're talking to as many people as we possibly can. And just remember, when the Prophet ﷺ first got the revelation, they were a handful of Muslims. When they migrated to Medina, how many of them were there? 100? Might even be 70, the first migration. Right? And within 23 years, they were thousands and they controlled the whole Arabian Peninsula. Right? There's nothing happening to us now that is in any sense as bad as what the Prophet ﷺ went through. We should keep that in mind. And when we're scared about things, it's natural to be scared, natural to worry, right? But at the end of the day, we either believe the things that we say, or they're just words. When we talk about tawakkul, reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, are we genuine when we say that? It doesn't mean we don't take account of all the risks and we mitigate, but we don't let it stop taking the action that we need to take. Do you think the people in Palestine and Gaza are better or worse off than we are? How do they react? Every single time an atrocity happens, what do they do? You see the faith in them every single time. And we sit here and we worry about what Dutton's going to do. Because people say to me, you know what, if you do this, what if Dutton wins? And I say, you know what, so what? I don't care. We put up with 10 years of the Liberal Party. We can survive another 4 years if we have to, if that's the price of us getting political power. If that's the price of us getting political power, who cares? What's he going to do? He's not going to put me on the ground and stab me with a spear like happened to the Sahaba. He's not going to put me on the ground and put huge rocks on my chest. What am I worried? What's he going to do to me? Why are we worried about things like this? What does it say about our self-respect and our faith in ourselves? You know, the days that we come from a position of weakness as Muslims, we have to stop this. Our strength is our religion, is our faith. We should never ever be scared to say, I'm a Muslim, this is what Muslim stands, this is what Islam stands for. You know, I don't care if you don't agree with me. I don't need you to agree with me. I need you though to understand, this is what I stand for. And every time you interact with me, you will know these are the principles I stand for. Unlike you, where your values are like a winter coat. You'll take them off and put them on as it suits you. That's not what Muslims are. We stand for something. We need to take that strength and that dignity back as Muslims. Because do we genuinely believe that our faith has the answer to society's problems or not? Honest question, do we believe that or not? Then why are we worried? Why are we scared about saying Islam says about gambling X, Y, Z? There's a whole argument, a whole debate now about advertising and gambling. Where is our voice in that debate? There's a whole argument around domestic violence and the impact of gambling and alcohol. We have positions around gambling and alcohol which are absolutely relevant to the issue of domestic violence. Where is our voice on that? And those issues are not faith issues, they're society's issues. Our faith just gives us a solution to those problems. That's what we need to be strong enough to say, this is what Islam is. Sorry, I started preaching.
All right, thank you so much, brother, for coming here and giving us all this very, very comprehensive information.